Okay, for question 4, part A, we're given this function f, which is defined by secant x plus 2, on this domain of x, where x is greater than or equal to 0, so it includes 0 but less than pi over 2, so we're not including pi over 2, and we want to write down the range of f. So let's just think what is happening to this function on this domain of x here. So we can write this function out as f of x is equal to, well, secant x is just 1 over cos of x, and then plus 2. So what is happening to this term here, this 1 over cos of x, between when x is 0 and pi over 2? So, well, at x equals 0, cos of 0 is equal to 1, so we're going to get 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. And as we go from 0 toward pi over 2, well, cos of x is actually going to get smaller and smaller. It's going to approach 0. So when x is super close to pi over 2, that means cos of x is going to be very, very close to 0. So what that means for that first term, 1 over cos x, is we're going to get 1 divided by some really, really small number. And when we have a constant, like say 1 divided by a super small number, well, we're going to get a very, very large number. So as x gets closer and closer to pi over 2, well then 1 over cos x is going to tend toward infinity. So that means the lowest our function can be is going to be 3. So that's when x is 0. So we're going to get 1 over cos of 0. This is 1 over 1. So 1 and then plus 2 is equal to 3. And then as we go from 0 toward pi over 2, cos x is going to tend towards 0. So that means 1 over cos x is going to go toward infinity. So we can just write that our function, the range of our function, is just going to be f of x is greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so that is our answer for part 4a. We can also look at the problem graphically. So if we just pull up our calculator and if we graph our function, so we'll just start a new graph and then we graph our function. So I'll just write it as 1 over cos x. It doesn't really matter. You can write it as secant x as well. So 1 over cos of x, and then we need to plus 2, and then graphing that. So we can see between x is equal to 0 and pi over 2 is somewhere here. We're going to have a vertical asymptote because our function's not defined at pi over 2, because cos of pi over 2 is 0. So we're going to have a vertical asymptote there. And we can just check that our lowest value here is in fact 3. So if we just go to menu, we can analyze the graph, find the minimum. So it looks like it's about 3, and yeah, so when x is 0, our function is equal to 3, and that's just going to tend up toward infinity. Okay, so you can also graph the function if you want to have a sort of clearer idea of what is going on. And that is question part 4a.